It started with a pain she couldn't name, a quiet, persistent ache that stole her nights and haunted her days. Not the kind of pain that makes you collapse to the floor, but the kind that eats at you slowly, leaving you feeling smaller with each passing week. For months, Ayesha avoided the doctor. She hid it from her friends, her colleagues, even her mother. Not because she thought it was harmless, but because she was ashamed. Ashamed of what her body was becoming. Ashamed of how something so personal could feel like a public humiliation if spoken out loud. She had convinced herself that no one, least of all a stranger in a white coat, would understand. She didn't want pity. She didn't want the cold, clinical tone that doctors sometimes use when they don't see the person, only the illness. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of the good still left in the world, please like this video, subscribe to Royal Stories, and share it with someone who might need hope today. Your support means the world and helps us bring more heart-touching stories to life. It was only when the pain became unbearable, waking her in the middle of the night and leaving her breathless, that Ayesha found herself sitting in a small private clinic. The rain outside blurred the world into silver streaks as she clutched her purse, her heart pounding like she was about to confess a crime. She told herself she would be brief, just give the bare details, take the prescription, and leave. But when the door opened, and her eyes fell on the man who walked in, she froze. He wasn't what she expected. Tall, no older than 30, with sharp but gentle features, eyes that carried both intelligence and something far rarer in a doctor, deep empathy. He introduced himself as Dr. Zayan. His voice was calm, warm, almost as if he knew she was more afraid of speaking than of the pain itself. She hesitated, her fingers twisting in her lap. The words felt stuck, heavy. But something in his manner, how he didn't rush her, how he simply sat down and gave her his full attention, made the dam break. She told him everything. The symptoms she had hidden, the embarrassment she felt, the fear that her body was betraying her. She braced herself for judgment, but instead he nodded slowly, as though her pain wasn't strange, wasn't shameful, just real. Then he surprised her. He told her that years ago, he had suffered from a condition not unlike hers. One that had taken his confidence, his health, and nearly his career. He understood the shame, the frustration, the isolation. What she didn't know, not yet, was that Dr. Zayan was no ordinary doctor. He came from a wealthy family, yes, but his success was his own making. He had turned down opportunities abroad, built his own private practice, and quietly funded medical care for patients who couldn't afford it. To him, medicine wasn't just a career, it was a mission born from personal suffering. He had promised himself that no patient would ever feel as unseen as he once had. Over the next weeks, her visits became more than appointments. They became moments of restoration. He guided her through treatment plans, adjusting them with care. He reminded her to be patient with herself, that healing wasn't linear. The pain began to lessen, but something else grew in its place, trust. A trust so deep that Ayesha began to share parts of her life she hadn't spoken about in years. How her condition had made her withdraw from her dreams, from love, from even the smallest joys like wearing her favorite dress or meeting friends for tea. He listened, never once making her feel weak. It was during one of her later visits, while waiting in the clinic lobby, that she overheard two nurses talking. They mentioned how Zayan had personally paid for a young boy's surgery last week, how he often worked pro bono for patients from rural areas, and how, despite being from a wealthy family, he drove an old car because he funneled most of his earnings into his charity clinic. She realized then that his kindness wasn't an act. It was who he was. One rainy evening, after her final follow-up, she stood outside the clinic, the smell of wet earth in the air. Her pain was nearly gone, but more importantly, so was the heavy weight of shame she had carried for so long. She thanked him, her voice trembling, not just for treating her condition, but for treating her like a person. He smiled, that quiet, knowing smile, and told her something she would never forget: pain is part of being human. But so is hope. Don't ever be ashamed of either. In the months that followed, Ayesha found herself stepping back into life. She rejoined her friends, began working toward a small business idea she had long abandoned, and even signed up for an evening art class. She never forgot that it had taken one doctor, one act of empathy, to help her reclaim her courage. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Royal Stories. Your engagement helps us continue sharing stories of hope, compassion, and second chances that the world needs more than ever. Special request. Comment below and tell us, have you ever met someone whose kindness changed the way you see yourself or the world? And so, while Ayesha's pain faded into the past, the lesson remained like a quiet echo. Healing is more than medicine, it's the human heart choosing to understand another.